This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Hey everybody, welcome to the More Than Just Code podcast. My name is Tim Mitra. I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined today by Cosmo Scharf in New York City.
Hello.
So I'm delighted to have Cosmo on the show. He's, there's a big discussion these days, especially in the iOS community, about Vision Pro and where it's going and that kind of stuff. And Cosmo happens to be not just a Vision Pro user or developer or designer, but also has a heavy background in VR and AR and mixed reality, or XR as they like to call it. So yeah, let's dive in. As a bit of a background, I met Cosmo when he started Vision Hack a few months ago, and I signed up as just to see what was going on, and eventually I just ended up being a mentor for a lot of the projects. So it was great being a mentor, as I got to see what other people are doing before the big reveals, right? So Cosmo, so I was looking into your LinkedIn to try and get some background on you, and you studied computer science, I guess, in California and LA.
Film production, actually.
Film production, okay.
Yeah, so I grew up in middle school discovering YouTube in 2007. So my initial interest was really the intersection of technology and filmmaking and storytelling. And so that took me to USC for film production, where I then...
So where are you from originally? Like, where are you?
New York City.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Right, I was going to ask how you ended up back in New York after being in LA for quite a while, right?
Yeah, well, I spent 10 years in LA, and that's really where my career started, still while I was at USC, where I started VR LA, which was a meetup group for VR people. And then from there started Mind Show, where we helped people tell stories using 3D animation and VR in the early days of that technology, in the modern era of it at least. And so it was initially my focus was how can we help people tell stories using virtual reality.
Right. And so my introduction to virtual reality goes back to like dial-up modems and devices you could hook up from one end to the other and have relationships with people and all kinds of really boxy animation. But that's like the late 90s, early 2000s, I guess, right?
People have been trying to do VR for many decades. It's, we talk about like VR as if it's existed for, since like whenever the Rift came out, but it's really built on, many years of hard research and, R&D. So, we owe a lot of gratitude to the many pioneers that have helped us get where we are today.
Yeah, and so in terms of filmmaking, let's dig into that a bit. I have a lot of friends who are obviously in the movie industry, film industry, radio industry, broadcasting in general, and I know that a lot of them try to go to LA, obviously, at some point, because it's kind of the mecca for that industry, right? I'm in Toronto, which is like Hollywood North, maybe tell us a little bit about your film experience, like how that sort of molded you and when you went into VR.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, going back to discovering YouTube in middle school, that was really where everything began for me. And I was really excited by the prospect of being able to make something that could then be seen by potentially millions of people. That was like the early days of the viral videos. And so I got started with my friend Felipe making stop motion videos, and then also just short films with my friends through high school as well. And I was taking classes at my high school for film class as well, and experimenting with like iMovie and Final Cut and early versions of Premiere Pro. And just the notion of getting to create worlds that people could experience was really fun. And especially back when I was a teenager, it was seemingly unlimited in terms of like what you could do, because we weren't like limited by you have to like hire and pay people. Like,
right.
like when you want to make, it's amazing now, you know, if you know, as an adult, right, if you want to make a film, of course you have to go through a very arduous process, usually of raising money and figuring out how to pay people and all the business aspect of it. But when you're a kid and, you know, just a teenager in middle and high school, it's a lot more. I just remember feeling very free. It was a very creatively fulfilling process for me. And I loved getting to work with computers and using, you know, After Effects and doing some basic like visual effects. So yeah, that was my early interest, I would say, in focus in computers was through storytelling. And so that really took me through all the way through to, you know, create Mind Show, which was the reflection of both of those interests.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I mean, I stumbled across YouTube around the same time. It's interesting that you, as a young person, would have gotten into that right away, because I think YouTube took a long time before it kind of really took off, right? Even before Google bought it, right?
Yeah, yeah. That was, I mean, you know, when it was just getting started, there wasn't so much this notion of like the influencer or creator economy. It was still very much in the early days. And so it was really just like this unbridled joy of like making silly, fun, weird things just for the fun of making it. And then later on, of course, the economics came in, and now we have this whole industry around making videos. And yeah.
For me, it was like I'm a Zappa fan, and Dweezil Zappa, his son, started playing his music, and I saw him in concert, and I just Googled around, and I stumbled across some YouTube clips people had recorded with their phones and just thrown up on YouTube. That's how I learned about YouTube, right? Not so much the first. I think one of the inventors was at a zoo or something and filming an elephant or something like that. But yeah, it's interesting to sort of see the evolution of that and how it kind of grows, and how, again, we can go into VR and stuff like that. But so Mind Notion, that's a sort of like a 3D animation empowering tool, I guess.
Mind Show?
Mind Show.
Yeah. Yeah, so Mind Show is a tool that uses a game engine to help people tell stories using virtual reality headsets. So initially, this was using the very first version of the Vive when that came out, and we were looking at that, and just the broad question of we're trying to answer how can you tell stories using VR. We were super excited about it, and at the time there was mostly just 360 video was starting to become a thing, very early days of that, and it was interesting to us, but it was limited in the sense that it wasn't interactive, and it was usually flat, and it just was nowhere near as exciting as what you could do with a game engine by comparison. So we're like, oh, maybe we can use Unity for telling stories. And at the time, this was in 2014 when we first started the company. That was kind of a notion that wasn't nearly as common as it is today, when you have, of course, the whole virtual production concept and Unreal Engine and very high fidelity uses of those game engines. So at the time, this was kind of a stretch. It was curious, how could we do this? And so we saw the Vive, and we were thinking, this was the first time where we had the introduction of the hand-tracked controllers, because previous to that it was just the face, the putting something on your over your eyes so you could feel like you're somewhere else. Now we brought the hands in, and we're like, okay, well, theoretically we could take advantage of that to figure out where your arms are, and from there the rest of your body, using inverse kinematics. And so we're able to turn the headset and the controllers and your gaming PC into make you one person, an entire 3D animation studio. So the way it worked was you could become a character in first person and embody any character, an alien, a piece of kale, humans. Yeah. One of our favorite characters was a Twinkie, a snack cake, and pick your environment, select a variety.
You're building
of
the whole
props.
World with a skybox, something like that, and
well, our team of artists designed assets for people to use, and it was we had this incredible array of characters, environments, and props that you could then play with and tell a story, typically improving it and recording yourself as multiple characters in a 3D environment. and I'm describing it, but the experience of actually being there and putting the headset on and feeling like you're actually a character in a world is there's kind of a disconnect there. So it's like I can kind of describe it, but it's very, very cool and fun when you're actually in there. And then once you record yourself, you can then film it with a virtual camera and export that as a video that could then be chopped up, edited however you please. And so we had a whole network and community of people making videos with this program. And we did that for many years, and then discovered that it was going to be really hard to monetize around like 2017, 2018. So we pivoted to a professional animation studio using the same technology. So what was once a publicly available app that anyone could use now became more private and more so for internal use for clients. And the company is still around today, but I haven't been part of it for at least 4 years or so.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting model. Like, I guess, yeah, that's the challenge of, I call myself an indie developer. I don't know if you think of yourself that way as well. But, I have a company that I kind of work out of, sort of thing. But as opposed to like being a rugged individualist who's out there putting apps on the App Store, right? Yeah, so I guess you sound like you've had a team. Like I want to go back to also poking around on your LinkedIn, and way down the bottom there, there's video of you doing keynotes at LAVR, I think you called it.
VRLA, yeah.
VRLA, yeah. So how did that
Sure.
did that came out of the same sort of?
Yeah, so VRLA came first actually. So again, going back to when I was at USC, this was when I was in my sophomore year. I guess really first of all, the catalyst for me really, so I've always been interested in technology, but the catalyst was reading Ready Player One when I was on vacation in Miami. And I read that in 3 days, and it was like the fastest I've ever read any book. It totally captivated my imagination. The prospect of a whole virtual universe. This was back when the concept of metaverse was barely, if at all, in the public consciousness.
So just for reference, what year would that have been?
This was 2013 or 2014, I want to say. Yeah, around that time. Yeah, so just about 10 years ago. So I read this book, and it was like so exciting, the idea of like, oh, I could go to this world and have all these items and talk to friends and like be in this virtual experience that was like hyper real and all that. And from there, the Rift, I think, had just been announced on Kickstarter, so I was aware of it, and it was still very early days, but the prospect of like getting to try that was really exciting. I was like, oh, I could feel like I'm in some kind of video game. That's really cool. I was, as a kid, I saw Spy Kids 3D, and that was just like so cool to me, like the idea of like feeling like you were somewhere else in another world. And so the Rift was a thing, and I'm trying to think. I was just very excited about the concept of VR, not even having tried it yet. Just like it was so cool, and so I started this group called VRLA that was just a meetup to meet other people that shared a similar interest. And I was frustrated that no one else around me in a pretty, well-informed like circle of friends in like filmmaking, for example, like just no one had even heard of the concept. It was like a complex, thing to describe if you've never heard of it before back, 10 years ago. And, it was just a series of synchronistic events where it just really grew quite large and organically. I posted this link to the meetup page on Reddit, and someone commented and were like, oh, maybe we could have it on Digital Domain. And that was John Root, who became one of my co-founders. And that was just like a very lucky, seemingly lucky thing where I was just like, I had this idea. I knew I wanted to do it. I was excited about it, but I didn't know. I had no plan of actually like how I would pull it off. And so we were able to host it at one of the world's largest VFX houses at the very first one, and had like a couple hundred people there. And from there, we continued to do events over the next couple of years at different visual effects houses that John was connected to. And so that lended a pretty great degree of credibility and like professionalism that I probably would not have been able to do on my own just as like a college student. And we continued to build the team and grow, and found ourselves 4 years later at the world's largest, one of the largest convention spaces, in the world and in Los Angeles. And we really grew with the industry, with the hype, over between 2014 and 2018. There was just tremendous excitement from some of the largest tech companies in the world, and we were able to have them participate and collaborate with us. And it was a very, very exciting time because it was a genuinely new platform that there was a lot of like uncertainty around, and both positive and negative, right? It's like, oh, you don't know what this thing could be. Like, you could use your imagination to fill in the gaps. And we, practically speaking, like at the actual conference, we would have a giant show floor with all kinds of companies, large and small, from some of the biggest companies in the world.
I just want to give people a context here. Like, I watched some of your videos yesterday, and just the list of sponsors, the number of sponsors, and the size of some of those sponsors is quite astounding. Considering some of my friends have done conferences, and it's been a real challenge, So like especially because we focus on Swift and stuff like that. But
it was. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was really. I mean, it was just really being at the right place at the right time. Like, we happened to become interested in a very exciting new platform about 1 to 2 years ahead of when everyone else started really paying attention to it. And we became known for, this is the place to go if you're interested in VR, AR, and of course LA is huge, and really the intersection of like media, entertainment, technology, visual effects. And we had that was our unique niche compared to some of the other burgeoning VR meetups and communities, in San Francisco, New York, etc. And so we brought together all kinds of people, and it was just a very eclectic group of companies and people, and also space for learning. We had workshops and presentations and panel discussions about all kinds of elements related to VR. And it was a really wonderful thing to be part of that I'm really grateful for, and it was serving the community in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, no, it looked fantastic. I'm surprised that I don't know how I missed it, to be honest with you. Like, mind you, I wasn't really paying attention to VR at the time.
Well, I think you just answered it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, I think the reality is, like, I've sort of been, playing. I mean, I'm playing around with 3D modeling for years. I've got a 3D printer behind me. Some of on the old 68Ks, I was doing 3D stuff, right? But it's never really kind of came to the point where, what do I do with this, right? Like the little sculpture of myself right here, I actually did that on an iPad with a pencil, and then thought, well, because I'm a sculptor, painter, visual artist by training, and I've been working in digital for so long. So how do I take the natural sculpting abilities that I have and translate that into an app? Well, I found an app where I can sculpt now, and I've so it's kind of interesting that we're getting to the point where the stuff is becoming real, like with was it Magic Leap and the Vives you mentioned before, Oculus to a certain extent, and of course we've all, as you mentioned in one of your videos, we've been waiting for Apple to come into the game, right? So
it's that's a good transition, I guess, to talk about Vision Pro, because I started paying attention and getting excited about VR about 10 years ago, roughly, and simultaneously I've always been a huge fan of Apple since I was a kid, and I love the iPhone, love my MacBook, and it just seemed inevitable that Apple would get into the game at some point. And we were expecting that would happen maybe like in 2016 or 2017 when they announced ARKit. I mean, they had ARKit, and that was a big deal in and of itself to do high quality AR on the phone, but there was this expectation that I had and many others in the community shared that Apple would, more quickly get into it. Granted, the Vision Pro was supposedly delayed a couple of years because of COVID, but yeah, it was for me just like this very patient experience of like, is it going to be this year? Is it going to be next year? Finally, you know, they announced it in 2023. And, I mean, I was like obsessed to the point of like literally having dreams of getting to experience it and imagining like what it would be like to use it, because I was just constantly thinking about it. And it finally came out and I have it and it's awesome. And it's definitely like not quite fully the thing that like, we hope, or we know rather that it can be. I think for what it is, it's quite great, but it definitely has its flaws. That said, like I'm still quite bullish on the overall like prospect of, let's say like XR and spatial computing as it will evolve over the next however many years.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, spatial computing. Like, and to give some perspective, I mean, like I on the talk show, I don't know if you watched that show, but it's John Gruber talking to Federighi and Joswiak, and Joswiak mentioned that, and I've lived through this. Like you know, I was listening to you talk about being an Apple fanboy. I lived through Apple when Apple was on the auction block for like $500,000 or $500 million. Like it was like, you know, it was dead. It was dying.
That's
Jobs
wild.
came back. You know,
Yeah.
brought Next over. Next step became Mac OS
Yeah.
X or Mac OS 10. My friends are going to kill me for saying that. But you know, and then and kind of the iMac kind of resurrected Apple and brought it back into the thing. And that was the beginning of internet kind of thing. So I've lived through, I used to get laughed at by people at work because they worked on IBMs and I worked on these little toy Macintoshes, you know. In fact, the one behind me, the SE30 back there, is my wife's computer from back in the day.
Nice.
But yeah, so but the point I'm going to try to make here is, and you know, I also believe that the Vision Pro or the market for Vision Pro or for spatial computing, we're just at the beginning of it. Like this is the tip of the iceberg. And because I had an iPhone back in 2007. I live in Canada, so I had to import one from the States and unlock it and get it to work up here on our network. And I remember going to California for like, you know, the next 3 years and wondering where all the iPhones were. Everybody was still rocking BlackBerries and HTCs and Windows phones. So, you know, it took 4 generations before the iPhone really kind of took off. And it's same thing with even the iPod. I mean, the iPod didn't really take off until Apple introduced iTunes on Windows, right? So, you know, and I mean, I don't know about you, but I use my Vision Pro every single day. Like the only day I wouldn't use it is if I have a super migraine or something like that. But I was even showing it to some family members yesterday, and yeah, I mean, I watch TV on it, I watch movies on it, I consume all the 3D movies that are available, and I write apps for it. You know, so. Nice. And I do my spatial computing. I open up my Xcode, and I have a little 13-inch Mac right here, which is okay. But when you want to work with, you know, Windows and simulators, you know, opening it up on a 4K virtual screen, and I can be anywhere in the house and do that, right? Mm-hmm. So from that point of view, I mean, you know, is it expensive? I don't know. For me, it's not, right? It's paid for itself. And I've actually spent the entire last year, I got laid off a year ago, and I've been spent the entire year focused on Vision OS, and I'm doing okay, you know, and I'm having a good time doing it, which is the best part about it, right?
That's important. Yeah. That's great to hear. No, the context you shared about the history of Apple is fascinating. I think that was a little before my time. I mean, I grew up in a period with, like, I remember as a kid growing up where the iPod announcements were like the big exciting thing, you know, year after year. And then that became the iPhone, of course. But you're totally right in that it wasn't until, so I was obsessed and super excited by the first iPhone, like many people were. And, but it wasn't until about the iPhone 4 where I looked around and I noticed just, you know, the landscape around me that most people had iPhones all of a sudden. So that was a combination of form factor, price, it being available on more networks, you know, the App Store being just overall being a more useful device, etc. And, you know, is it reasonable to expect by Gen 4 or 4 years, I mean, whatever that metric is for the Vision Pro, to kind of have a similar effect? I think that, I don't know quite how many years or how many generations, but I think it's reasonable to expect that, you know, over time it will become more useful, faster, more affordable, just a better product overall.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, we could just take a second to talk about Snap glasses and Orion. I know you're involved in those things too.
Sure, yeah.
See your post, but like I joke that for me the windows are so real. They finally come out with a VR product where I'm sitting there watching the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions last night and Saturday Night Live on my TV on my Vision Pro, thinking, I haven't turned my actual physical TV on in months, right? Because I use my Vision Pro for that. And these windows, they're so lifelike. You actually believe that they're in front of you, right? I have to stop and remind myself that I'm actually looking at a screen that's like a few centimeters away from my face, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I can't even imagine that. But I always joke that, eventually we're going to get a little chip implanted behind our ear because Apple's figured out the how to convince our our vision system and our audio system in our brains that this is real, right? So I mean that's kind of where I sort of see all this stuff going. I mean, lighter glasses, or if you go back to reality or
Yes.
Ready Player One, like kids going to school, putting on headsets, haptic suits, Disney's figured out the movable floor thing so you can walk around and not walk around.
Yeah, so
I've given you lots of time.
Personally, I'm not signing up for the chip in the brain, even though I did have a talk a while ago about being excited about that, but I've changed my perspective on that, and I don't think most people will sign up for that. I mean, certainly some might, but
that could be 20 years out. Who knows?
I definitely would prefer a non-invasive solution to virtual reality of that sort. But as for like glasses, it's a really interesting time to be speaking about that because we've been dreaming of and talking about the notion of having AR glasses for many years. I mean, before I was born, but practically speaking, from my memory, since as long as like I got into VR 10 years ago, and we've had the HoloLens, we've had Magic Leap, both significant in their own right, and in the past month we've seen Snap with spectacles and then Meta Orion, both compelling devices, and together represent a new chapter in spatial computing, AR glasses becoming real and practical. Both are cool to talk about, on their own. Of course, Meta, the Orion being like most cutting edge device that we're aware of as far as AR glasses. I mean, God knows what Apple has in their labs, but supposedly they shut down a project that was attempting to do what Orion did a couple of years ago or however many years ago. So from like a North Star, here's what's possible at the cutting edge of technology, it's very impressive. I mean, I haven't tried it, but everything that I've heard is quite positive about it. And, it's important to be able to like have moments like that for humanity, I would say, where we could point to something, be like, this is what's possible, and knowing that we can build from there. The thing that shifted my perspective a little bit on it is knowing that the version of it that they intend to ship to us to be able to purchase however many years from now would have Meta would have a field of view that is closer to the Snapchat spectacles, from like 70 degrees to about 50 something degrees, which is related to the material that they're using on the for the glass to project the image onto. And as for the spectacles, I have had a demo of that and was pleasantly surprised. I overall had a pretty fun experience with it, and the big difference there is that this is a device that people can purchase, at least on a subscription basis.
Yeah, the developer,
and actually make stuff for it. Whereas the Orion is, they say it's for like internal use and like select partners. So it's not like wholly exclusive, but it is different from someone like us, where like
I heard that the cost to make them is prohibitively expensive, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that's where the rubber meets the road. It's like, yes, you can show us something really phenomenal and exciting, but like if the cost to produce it is simply not affordable for most people, well, it's like, it's not that it's pointless. I mean, it's to my what I was saying earlier, that it is important to show the world what is possible in the realm of technology. But like, if we can't actually buy it and for quite a while, then like it's just a different story, right? So for the spectacles, I think what's impressive is that they've been able to demonstrate a cohesive vision for a hardware software AR platform with the lenses, have a decently wide field of view, and have a UI UX paradigm that is pretty intuitive, and it's something that people can go and play with and build for right now. So I love that, and I'm just as excited about that as I am for the Vision Pro.
I got invited to Let's Vision OS in Beijing back in April. And it was a Vision OS conference, right? And surprisingly, a lot of people had Vision OS or Vision Pros already in Beijing, and it was people from all over Asia as well as North America and Europe. But and so I got to try this other. I'm going to show you the pictures. I don't even know what it's called, but that's the other set of glasses I got to try. I don't know if you recognize them. Are those?
They look like. Are they AR? It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Is that XR?
The thing is, it was kind of similar. Like I'm holding my hand out like that because the character appeared in my hand, and
cool.
I think we were like shooting basketballs or something like that, right, or something similar to that. But I mean, that's not Vision Pro. But the thing about it is I think that coming from art, I come from art, you come from film, perception. I always joke the perception is 9/10 of the law, right? That, to me, it like, even though I realized I was looking at an animated character, it felt real at the time when I was looking at it. The fidelity and the quality of the image was that good that I could easily suspend disbelief, right? And I think, the what's amazing about Vision Pro, especially when you look at spatial videos or we should probably talk about Submerged too, right?
Oh,
but,
sure.
But if it's good enough that you're not thinking, oh, it's pixelated or it's jaggy or whatever, like if the animation or the object you see in front of you is believable, I think the technology will lend itself. So I can see Snap and Orion or whatever Meta comes up with as being a viable option, right?
Yeah, well, that's a good point you're making about once the technology meets a certain quality bar, then you're not thinking about the technology, but more so you're experiencing the content as it's meant to be experienced fully. And I think in many ways the Vision Pro meets that bar. Especially as you mentioned, for Apple Immersive Video. So 180 and 360 video has existed for quite a while. It's not really anything new. But what is new about Apple Immersive Video is the quality, both in terms of the recording and the way it's displayed. So for people that are not aware, Apple Immersive Video is their branded version of 8K recording that's stereo, and it is 180 degree field of view. So when you're looking forward, it essentially fills your entire vision. Now, if you look to the side, you'll just see it's black behind you. And I think it's a smart approach, and it's one that I like because, 360 video is also interesting. It's harder to shoot because, of course, you have to clear the set fully behind you.
Yeah.
And also, it leaves the viewer a bit confused and kind of uncertain about where to look. It's like, how do you direct the viewer's attention, which is essential for storytelling and filmmaking, because, as filmmakers, we have the frame, and whatever we put in the frame is how we direct the flow of information. So when you have 360 video, it becomes a lot more confusing. It's like, where are you supposed to look? You have to use all kinds of other tricks. With 180 video, it's more akin to just I guess traditional filmmaking, where you put
I'm on
camera.
the roller coaster, I'm in the car, I'm moving forward.
Yeah, and so just like, of course, with 180, it's like you can see way more than just like a regular 2D frame. And this has been one of the most compelling use cases for the Vision Pro. It's still quite early on. There's honestly not still a ton of things that you can experience. They have all kinds of stuff from like sports to, they just came out with Submerged, as you mentioned, which was their first narrative experience. I love it. I think it's wonderful. I want to see more, as I think many people ask for. And I think it's really just the beginning of like a new genre of entertainment. I can see this becoming very popular once future versions of the Vision platform become available, and there's just more demand for it when there's more people that have the hardware. Right now it's a bit hard to justify making more content for such a small market.
I want a front row seat at the Oscars, or a front row seat at the the NBA playoffs or something like that. Like have a camera sitting there and broadcasting live would be really cool.
Yeah. So Apple acquired NextVR, I think in 2018, which was a company that was making. They had partnerships with the NBA and other businesses where they were doing actually what you're saying, live streaming sports into VR. But again, especially back then, the market for that was just too small. So they got acquired, and their technology became what is now Apple Immersive Video.
Oh, I see. Okay. Right.
Yeah. And to my point earlier about like the quality bar being raised for this, what's different about Apple Immersive Video today versus like 360 or 180 video back when, 6 years ago or so, is just you're not seeing the pixels, you're not seeing any like motion blur. You just more or less feel like you're there. Now granted, it's certainly not perfect. If you look at the edges, it's lower quality. But in particular, for some of the sports experiences, like they have, I believe it was like the NFL. There's like an NFL.
There's an NBA, NFL. There's soccer,
NBA.
Soccer.
Yeah, there's soccer. Yeah, so they have like these kind of super cuts from different types of sports games. And granted, the criticism is like, this is cool, but you're coming out with this like 6 months after the thing happens. Like I don't care as much. So I guess just, maybe take it more like a preview of what's to come as opposed to like a meaningful piece of content today. I mean, I still enjoyed everything that they put out, because what's really remarkable is, they take you from like the pregame of like watching the players like walk onto the stadium, then you're in the locker room, and then you're down on the field and you're watching like people catch the football like right in front of you, and then it shifts perspectives, and it's from that first person perspective that makes it so unique compared to like traditional just watching it on a TV screen where you're like totally zoomed out far away, where you feel like you're there just like with the players. And
well, it's also the spatial audio too, right? So
the spatial audio, is phenomenal. And have you ever seen the movie Brainstorm?
I know I've heard of it though.
Yeah. So this actually, I think it came out in 1983, and it's like one of those classic like sci-fi movies about a VR type of experience in that genre. I'd heard of it for a while, but definitely, for anyone that's listening that is interested in VR, I would definitely encourage you to watch that movie, because they're essentially showing this concept of multisensory memory capture. So the technology in the sci-fi movie is like, what if we are able to capture a memory and play it back, not just of like what someone sees, but like what they're hearing, what they're tasting, what they're smelling. Yeah, and then like be able to play it back. But in the movie, they have these scenes where it's like this first person perspective of like people like, I don't know, like skydiving or like going on roller coasters, and the mise en scène, the composition of that is like almost exactly what Apple Immersive Video is like in practice today in 2024. So it's like incredible. So there's like about 40 years, granted it's not like multi-sensory in that sense, but it from sci-fi, like here's a concept of like a thing in the movie, to like you can kind of experience a version that's very close to it. It's amazing how much we've been able to make our sci-fi dreams into a real experience for human beings.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting that just for like I like to say, I like to quote Carrie Fisher a lot, saying instant gratification isn't fast enough. But like, because I remember when I was a kid, it was like in hockey school in the summer, and the Bruins won the cup in like 1970, and in 72 they showed us a film on 35 millimeter, telling the whole story of the Bruins, struggles to get through the playoffs and actually ultimately win the cup, right? So that was 2 years later on 35 millimeter, right, or 16 millimeter. So waiting, 2, 3, 4 months for the NBA playoffs to be on Vision Pro doesn't sound like a long time, right? In relative terms, right?
Well, our expectations have shifted dramatically.
Well, I want it now,
So,
right? Like,
why
do I have to?
speed,
we've been saying that about Vision Pro in general, right? So,
Yeah, the speed at which we want to experience things in general, right? Now that we have smartphones and the internet, it's just like we want it now. So if it's the months long gap now is kind of unheard of, but I mean, I would imagine that the pipeline to produce these types of experiences just is very intense, right? We're dealing with files that are probably massive.
yeah, and Apple doesn't move fast in that sense too, right? I mean, like I think other companies once they get on board are going to do. I'm actually disappointed because, I've got a list on my website of all the 3D videos or 3D movies that are available for Vision Pro, and like Deadpool Wolverine just came out, and it's not available in 3D. I mean, what?
Well, you bring up another great example of like what Vision Pro is really great at is getting to watch 3D movies. I watched part of Ready Player One and Avatar 2 on the plane somewhat recently, and it's so cool. You go from feeling like you're on a cramped. You literally are on a cramped airplane sitting next to somebody, and then you put this thing on and you're like in another space where it just feels more spacious, and you can really get immersed in the experience of that. And yes, the quality of the displays on the headset are really phenomenal.
Yeah, I flew to San Francisco for WWDC, and I actually did billable work on my Mac sitting in economy.
Nice.
Because I had, again, and the screen is like floating above 2 rows in front of me. It's that big, right? Sort of thing. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, so the market, I mean, the number of devices out there is relatively low too. That's another thing about Vision Pro. I guess that could be part of the economics for why studios decide not to release something in 3D, because the market's small, right? At this point.
Yeah. It's an interesting time where, we have this thing that's available that people are excited about, but there's a lot of cynicism and like doubt about its future and people claiming that it's a failure, which I find amusing because, well, for one, it's been available for less than a year, primarily just in a single country, right? It wasn't until a couple months ago where it's available in just a few more countries. And then also, yes, I mean, by design, in some ways, it is just inevitably going to have a smaller market by virtue of the price. When you charge something like that, there can only be an expectation of having a smaller volume of people purchasing something like that. So, they could have charged something possibly somewhat more reasonable, like $2,000 or whatever, but I, in some ways, think it's smart that they did not do that, because by making it so absurdly expensive, it effectively blocks a portion of people that would have purchased it at a lower price and then have been disappointed and burned by seeing something that was, yes, impressive, but not fully formed in the sense of like, yeah, it's not a perfect device. I mean, my main criticism of it is it's just not comfortable with the default strap. I tried to watch a movie with the default strap, the Solo knit band, many months ago on the airplane, and literally I took it off because it was too uncomfortable. So that's a big miss there. I know that they had the other head strap that it comes with that didn't work for me
I didn't
as
like that
much
one at
still.
all. Yeah.
So, there's a number of third-party headbands that you can get. I made a video about that recently. One of my favorites is Globular Cluster, the CMA one. That's one that I use today. Of course, you can get Anna Pro. They have that. Syntec makes headbands. So there's a number of other options. I see you have the Anna Pro.
I like the Anna Pro myself.
Yeah. And so this was like definitely, however long Apple's been working on this device for, it's like they solved and figured out a lot of great things, and especially in terms of the UI UX of the software. But man, for something that you put on your face, that's strapped to your face, the ergonomics of it out of the box are a huge miss. For me at least, with just the default Solo knit band, I have to tighten it so much to my face in order for it to be to reduce the weight of it, that when I take it off, it just leaves these horrible red marks on my face, which is just like a complete no-go for most people. And it's like slightly embarrassing for me as someone obsessed with Apple and like technology.
Yeah. Well, you can't see it. It makes the bags under my eyes bigger. But
yeah. So, I mean, of course, I would imagine, or not imagine, it's like, I would bet that Apple is very aware of this and hopefully working to improve that on the next version. I mean, if they don't solve that on the next version, I would seriously question their thinking and their approach to making products, because it's like such an obvious problem from my perspective.
Yeah, you mentioned the Globular Cluster. I tried a version of that in Beijing, and it's a lot of plastic, right? But one of the things I did was this is a baseball hat that we cut the brim off, and I was wearing this before I got the Anna Pro. I was wearing this with the Solo Loop, and just the extra fabric on my head alleviated a lot of the weight, right? So
yeah, for sure. And I know that there's many mods, and here's the thing. I mean, if your customers are having to like cut apart baseball caps to make your product comfortable, you have a problem.
Yeah. Well, the amazing thing though, the amazing thing about it is like I've heard people whose bridge of their nose bumps against the lenses, and people have different shaped faces and schnozzes, and like
it's a very difficult problem. Right? Look, they did a lot to try and solve this problem. They have custom light seals and different, all kinds of different shapes and things to make it more custom fit. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate everything Apple has done to make the Vision Pro what it is, for sure. Like, they've done a lot that is right, but for all that they've done right, if it's not comfortable after 20-30 minutes by default with the default thing that you're shipping, that's just like it takes away from everything else that is.
Well, it's like we were talking about earlier about being able to see the pixels and the jaggies, like that gets you out of the zone, as it were, right? Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, overall, like, I'm still bullish on the future of it. I think that it is poised to transform or possibly replace a lot of how we use computers today. I think that the Vision Pro is in many ways being judged wrongly with rear view mirror thinking, based on the current media paradigm. And this is a point that my business partner Scott Brook and I talk about and think about as it relates to Vision Pro, which is if you think about like the original iPhone, it was shipped on the 2G singular network without an app store. And it wasn't until however many years later that it became obvious like what it was useful for, and it really catalyzed the growth of the networks that hadn't been built yet, 3G, 4G, 5G, etc. And so similarly with Vision Pro, we look at it today through the current media landscape, but it's just not the best way to think of it. It's built for experiences that have yet to be built. And I think
And
like
it's the worst Vision Pro we're going to have.
Yeah, and I think like the best example of this that gives you a taste of the future, that truly is a futuristic experience that you can experience today, is spatial personas. I mean, we've had like avatar chat experiences for a while. That concept is not new, but the ease of use and the quality, again, of spatial personas, for anyone that hasn't tried it, this is really a groundbreaking thing that is somewhat underground and not super well acknowledged by even people who have the device. They're not even aware of it or have yet to try it. But I'll put it this way, like we have Star Wars holograms exist. Now they're simulated within the screen of the device. I mean, they're not literally holograms, but like the concept of like projecting your friend into your room and talking to them as if they were there, that exists. And it is a profound experience of telepresence that is just way better than Zoom and way better than anything else that I've seen.
Every 2 weeks we have a chat where we have one person from Sydney, another person from Berlin, a third person from Phoenix, and I'm in Toronto, and we meet at the same time every 2 weeks. You know, for the gentleman in Sydney, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. For me, it's 5 in the afternoon, and they're high-fiving each other, and they're, you know, like, mean to do a thumb up, but they're high-fiving each other, and they're, you know, like they can touch finger, and the interface does a little sound and whatever as you do it. And you're right, it's like if one of us opens a document, it's like the three of us or four of us are sitting in a row as if we're sitting in a movie theater looking forward. Otherwise, we're sitting around the table talking to each other, right? Except that we're floating heads. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I mean, I loved all the stuff that we mentioned about Vision Pro earlier, but it was when I saw spatial personas, when I got to experience that, I was like, okay, they're onto something here. And it's not people that haven't tried it, it's just not going to be obvious to. But once you've experienced that and you can just project that forward, when you imagine a world where we have seamless telepresence, where you could talk to, I mean, this is something that I spoke about in like keynote presentations, about the notion of getting to speak to someone, a family member, whoever, as if they were there in front of you. Those were like words 10 years ago. Now they are real experiences that anyone with the Vision Pro can have. Now, granted, it's a very small niche segment of the market of the world population. It's like 0.00 whatever percent, but it is, you know, as Tim Cook says, like tomorrow's technology today. And so,
well, I mean, every Zoom meeting I jump on, I use my Vision Pro. As you saw during the hackathon, I don't think I attended with this face at least at any time, right? So,
yeah, it is very cool, and it's a very exciting thing to have, you know, to be able to have access to as a human being, and I just like when that becomes democratized, when it becomes at some point perhaps a more universal way of communicating. I mean, right now we're using Zoom, which is fine. Zoom is whatever. I mean, we all know what that is, but like it's the spatial persona experience of like having a 3D version that feels as if like the person is there in your room with you. Like that's what we want and have been dreaming of, and it exists, but it's not the most accessible yet, and not everyone has it, and even with people who have Vision Pro don't even know how to use it yet. So, you know, we still have a ways to go, of course, but the fact that it exists and it works so well is truly miraculous.
Yeah, no, it is amazing. I do want to, before we jump to the questions section of the show, I want to just take a second and talk about what your business, because you guys have a Vision Pro business, right? You're working on, right? A consulting business?
Yeah, so a couple of different things. So as you mentioned, we have the hackathon, the Vision Hack, which was hosted about a month ago, and that is the first global Vision OS hackathon. We had nearly 200 people participate around the world, and we gave out about $25,000 in cash and prizes across different categories. You were a mentor, so thank you for participating. And yeah, the idea there was to catalyze the growth of the Vision OS ecosystem, help people learn how to make apps. We had a variety of really incredible presentations from some of the top developers in the ecosystem. And overall, just a wonderful time to see the people's creativity of like what could be possible in just, you know, a couple days time. So yeah, that's one of the big projects that we're working on. And we intend on having another one. We haven't set a date for that, but there's definitely some interest there. And beyond that, I have consulting business, Vision OS Dev Partners, where we support developers with app store optimization and product design, product strategy, things like that. So you can learn more at visionosdevpartners.com. And then as well as, so Vision Hack would be visionoshackathon.com for that one. Continuing to explore other ways that we can support the developer ecosystem and build community around spatial computing. It's a bit early days right now, but I am in the process of putting together an incubator around that for people that are interested at the intersection of both AI and spatial computing.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, let's dig into the questions, and if you're seated comfortably, we can dive in.
Okay, I am.
So
still seated.
The questions are based on the work of Marcel Proust. There's a Marcel Proust questionnaire you may have heard of, but I've stolen a few questions from Stephen Colbert too. But so the first question is, what is your motto? What drives you?
Okay. What drives me is a little easier to answer than what's my motto, because it's like, I don't know if I have a catchphrase.
Yeah.
So I love technology, but what I really care about is having an impact on the world and creating meaningful technology that improves the human condition. So there's a lot of like gear, both hardware and software, that maybe like is just about making money. Making money is great and important, but I really care about ultimately the intersection of like where technology can improve health and elevate human consciousness. And I know that's a bit lofty, but like that's what I'm super excited about. Like, how can we build technology that helps us feel more connected, improves our health, and ultimately comes from a spiritual perspective. I think like having a spiritual perspective gives technology purpose.
Okay, cool. What's your favorite word?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't know if I have a favorite word. I don't know. My mind's searching for different things.
Here's an alternate question similar to that one. What words or phrases do you overuse the most? Like if I asked your friends, what would they say?
Next question.
Okay, we'll go to the fun questions. What's the best sandwich?
Anything with steak.
Anything with steak?
Yes.
Any particular one? Or?
I don't know. I love grilled cheese.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just straightforward grilled cheese, whole wheat bread, white bread.
Gruyere is always good. I have celiac, so I don't eat anything with wheat. So anything gluten free.
Okay. Apples or oranges?
Apples.
Sparkling or flat?
Sparkling.
Window or aisle?
Aisle.
Okay. Favorite smell?
First thing that comes to mind would be like coffee, like a bag of coffee, like very potent. That smells great.
Okay, what's the scariest animal?
First one that comes to mind would be sharks. Yeah, those are pretty can be pretty scary.
All right. Okay. Who's your favorite hero of fiction?
A fictional character.
Yeah. Can be book, movie, anime, comic book, whatever.
You know, I was just at Comic-Con yesterday, so it's kind of ironic that I'm like struggling to answer that because there's so many characters there, and maybe that's throwing me off because I'm not thinking of like any one in particular. But I mean, I think Batman's pretty cool, but I don't know if I would like say he's my favorite character. I love comic books and like Marvel, Star Wars, that kind of stuff, but I don't know if I'm like particularly enamored with any individual. I suppose I'm more so. Yeah, I mean, I like the franchises overall, but I don't know if I'm like particularly attracted to any individual character.
Okay. So just a segue here on so is in New York Comic Con, is it hard to get a ticket to like San Diego one or?
Well, this was the first time that I'd been, so I don't know how it compares to anything else. But I mean, at the time, I was only able to purchase a ticket for Thursday or Friday. But yeah, so I mean, it was absurdly crowded. So I mean, I think it's pretty well
was it
attended.
Where was it located?
At the Javits Center in New York.
Oh, Javits. Oh, yeah. I went to a Macworld there once. It's pretty big. That's a big place.
Yes, it was quite large.
What's the most used app on your phone?
Right now, X for sure. Yeah. Constantly opening that.
All right. So this is a question you kind of sort of answered already, but Star Wars or Star Trek?
That's a hard one. I mean, I like both. Growing up, I definitely was more paying attention and attracted to Star Wars, but more recently, I also love and appreciate Star Trek. In particular, Strange New Worlds, the TV show, I just really enjoyed. So I like both. I'm not like a hater on either one. I think that they both have some cool things to offer.
Cool. What's your most treasured possession?
Wow.
I mean, your house is burning down. What are you taking with you?
Yeah, I mean, my phone's always on me. I was gonna go for my phone or my MacBook, just being like essential objects for communicating, entertainment, and just job. Getting work done, getting paid. So it's like, if I don't have those, or in particular my
but you can replace
MacBook,
those, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but those right. So I can replace those. I mean, yeah, I can always get new ones. Yeah, it's like I'm thinking if there's like anything like given to me that is like, I see kind of what you're getting at with the question. Maybe, I don't know, it's maybe a little sad. I don't think of like anything that is like treasured in that regard. I mean, I have like, collectible toys and Legos and stuff, but they're not like treasured like, oh, like my grandpa gave them to me. I mean, I don't have any like, yeah, I don't have anything like that. That's interesting.
Actually, we didn't talk about your sort of background, your family. Like, you grew up in New York, but what's the background like? What part of New York did you grow up in?
Yeah, in Union Square.
Like right downtown Manhattan area. Right? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, my dad's from the Bronx. My mom grew up in Miami Beach. My family is Polish, like Eastern European. But yeah, I don't have. I mean, to your question about like treasured possessions, like I don't have anything from like my grandparents or family that is like this thing that has like meaning from them. Nothing's coming to mind initially, at least.
So a side question based on your name, when did you find out that Kramer's first name is Cosmo?
Well, there's an interesting. It's always a good story. So I was born 12 days before the episode about Seinfeld's name came out, and my parents did a coin toss for my last name. So I got Scharf, which is my dad's last name.
Right.
My mom's last name is Kramer.
Oh,
so I was
cool.
almost Cosmo Kramer, but I am not. So it is the name that I am not.
Thankfully, yeah, that would have been fun. Cool. Let's see. I got a bunch of questions here. Let's see. Find one. What number am I thinking of?
3.
Nope. Close. You got one of the digits. One of the digits.
Well, okay. That's better than none.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are like way off on that. Describe the rest of your life in 5 words.
The rest of my life in 5 words. Incredibly exciting and awesome.
That's 4.
Do I have to use 5?
No. You
Okay.
don't. There's no rule. There's no rule about that one.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, I just wanted to. Have you ever asked anybody for their autograph?
The only thing that comes to mind is some baseball, but it's not really significant to me. I don't remember who it was. So technically yes, but it's not anything.
Nothing surprising? Cool.
Yeah, nothing like that interesting.
Cool. And last question. What's the one thing you own that you should really throw out?
That I should really throw out? I'm like looking around. I mean, I prefer to keep things that I use and need. I mean, there's probably like a bunch of old clothes that I don't necessarily need to hold on to, but I'm not like a hoarder type, so generally. Well, I will admit there's a lot of like energy drinks and stuff from the hackathon that are left over that I don't want around, so I guess that's a better answer.
Yeah, we can give those away. Cool. All right, well, we'll wrap up now. So just before we do, where can people find you? How can they keep in touch?
Sure. So I'm pretty active on Twitter, X. You can look up my name, Cosmo, Cosmo, Scharf, Scharf. I also have a weekly newsletter called Magic Beans that talks all about spatial computing, AI, advanced technology, things like that. magicbeansnewsletter.com. And also on YouTube, I make videos about all the stuff we talk about. Again, you can just look up my name, Cosmo Scharf, on YouTube and find me there.
All right, my name is Timitra, Timmitra. I guess I'm on Twitter, but I'm kind of boycotting Twitter right now. But Mastodon and Instagram, you can find me there too as well. So until next time, we'll see you in the future.
This has been another episode of the More Than Just Code podcast. If you want to find out more about the show, you can visit the More Than Just Code website at mtjc.fm. There you can find a summary and show notes of each episode. We list links to the apps, code, and news that we mentioned on the show. If you like the podcast, tell your friends. Please leave a comment on the website, and if you can, please write a review on iTunes. And please recommend us in your favorite podcatcher. All of these things help others find out about the show. We really appreciate your help with spreading the word. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd love to hear from you, so use the hashtag AskMTJC. Once again, the podcast Twitter account is at @MTJC_podcast. Please consider supporting the show by pledging any amount on patreon.com/MTJC. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.